Hi, I wanted to have a quick chat about rent increases in Western Australia. So my previous video did mention about 12 monthly increases only now, which will probably take effect from July onwards. Now, what we need to consider is when we're doing our rent reviews and our lease renewals, if we are still have got leases with a midterm increase that has already been signed, we are able to still implement those increases. But the conversations I'm having with my landlords at the moment are, is this a good time to do it or not? What do I mean by a good time? Because obviously rents are good at the moment, and maybe the owner wants to capitalize on that. But let's consider from a tenancy perspective where that sits for the tenant and ultimately where that may sit for the landlord as well. If we're looking at the rent increases on lease expiry, it keeps it neat and tidy in terms of housekeeping for one thing, but it also enables the tenant to carefully consider their options. Are they able to absorb that increase? If so, they may then wish to renew the lease. If they can't, it then gives them an option to vacate appropriately. What do I mean by vacate appropriately? Under normal circumstances. Otherwise, if they are imposed an increase midterm of their lease and they cannot absorb the increase and they have no option but to accept it or move out, they then may be in a position where they have to break lease, and there could be financial damages which you as the landlord will be then claiming, and then of course that impacts on their bond, what they potentially may get back, as well as it will go on their tenancy record as actually breaking lease. So there are a few things to consider here. So if your property manager is having a conversation with you and perhaps encouraging you to maybe leave it until the lease expiry review, and therefore it's neater and tidier for all parties, then perhaps give that due consideration. Obviously, if you are giving instructions for the midterm increase to still take place, as the managing agent, we follow your instructions as long as, of course, the increase is within the term of the lease. One thing also to consider though is whilst markets have increased exponentially at the moment, some of the rents are going crazy. We do need to be mindful of how the rent increase is calculated in the lease agreement. So say for example, there is a maximum of 15% noted in the lease. We can't go beyond that regardless of where the market is. Nobody can predict exactly where it's going to go, which is why the agents will have recommended or do have a certain percentage or a dollar value or CPI or whatever type of calculation they have there. Just something to be mindful of if the property manager comes back to you and says we can only increase to this amount. So there you go, something to consider about rent increases and the times that we implement these increases if we are wanting to retain these particular tenants moving forward and to make it easier for everybody in terms of absorbing increases and giving them opportunity to consider their situation and their own futures.